Hey y'all, I'm Austin, and this is Sad Boys Anime. This week, I want to talk about Given. In my 10 LGBT animes you should watch list, I mentioned it, and as I was editing together footage for that one, I realized there was so much more I wanted to say for it. I connected with this show in a way that I was not expecting to, and I just want to talk about how that happened. Just a warning, this video is done expecting that you've seen the show, so if you're looking for a recommendation, this is it. It's a really good show. Go watch it, and then come back to this video. No, seriously. Go ahead. Okay, if you're still here, let's get started. Just in case y'all don't know the plot of this show or you need a refresher, I'm gonna go over it. Uenoyama has a band with his friends Akihiko and Haruki. He goes to high school and the other two go to college/grad school. Uenoyama finds Mafuyu asleep on a staircase at his school clutching a guitar. He is like, "Who is this kid with this guitar?" He's immediately drawn to him because he's a music boy and he's like, "Bruh, I like your guitar. And also you're really cute." Mafuyu is like, "Thanks, I don't know how to play it. Can you teach me?" Uenoyama at first is like, "No way, dude. I'm not a teacher. I don't teach things." But then he slowly caves in and decides to help him learn. He brings him to his band so that he can meet the other boys, and he's like, "Hey guys, I found this boy, and he's gonna hang out with us. Are we gay?" "Nah, that's not gay at all. Don't even worry about it. It's totally gay. Just wait for it." His two friends are like, "Alright, cool, sure, he can watch us practice." And then they see Uenoyama being happier and slowly falling in love with Mafuyu. Akihiko, the more experienced resident gay friend, is like, "Bro, you're gay, and you know what? That's awesome, and it's totally okay to have these feelings. And if you want to talk about it, you can come to me." Uenoyama is like, "Yeah, you're right. Thank you." Normally, this sort of thing is done in subtle language, trying to have like a double meaning of sorts, but this anime legitimately talks about liking boys. Uenoyama even asks if he's weird for being gay, and Akihiko is like, "What the fuck? Obviously you're not. Why are you even asking that?" I was really surprised to see this when I watched the show. At the same time as all of that, you're finding out about Mafuyu's life, and why he has the guitar, and the emotional baggage that comes with it, as well as seeing the relationship between Akihiko and Haruki develop slowly as well. Their character designs are amazing. For such a simplistic style, each one is dynamic in their own way. They're able to take this basic art and make each character work so well. As an example, Haruki has a different hairstyle pretty much every time you see him, just like how a normal person might change their look frequently. A personal bias of mine is piercings. I absolutely love piercings on anime characters. It's probably because I have a few and I'm a little bit biased, but come on. I just think when they're done well, it can look good on almost everyone. I have so many times where I'm looking at a design and thinking to myself, they're cute, but if they had piercings though, yes please. Is this just me? I don't know y'all, I just think it lets someone express themselves artistically, and it isn't done frequently enough in anime. Anyway though, the designs, like I said, just fit so well into the show. They're very down to earth, and this grounds the show nicely. It's a little more of a slow burn watching these relationships form, and I absolutely love it. I prefer when romantic shows have more of a build-up because I feel like I'm watching it naturally progress, rather than seeing something forcefully pushed upon me. The build-up is awkward and sweet. It's hilarious to watch them struggle to realize that they're in love with each other. I talked a little about how sweet Dokusei is in another video, and this show is exactly the same. All of the characters are reminiscent of people I know. All four of them are different types of gays. We have the cool guy with piercings, the hipster who works in a coffee shop, the edgy one who's really outspoken, and the shy, quiet one. As you learn a new skill, it can start out being really fun and enjoyable. As you feel more pressured to succeed and you're not learning anymore, it can end up feeling repetitive and it doesn't give you the same feelings anymore. Uenoyama is a really good example of falling back in love with something you used to care about. As someone who suffers from depression, I'm constantly falling in and out with my hobbies. For example, for me, it's writing. I used to love to write, but it's really hard for me to sit down and do it without feeling like it's not good enough. Starting this channel has become a way for me to write and express myself in a way that's a lot of fun and not as stressful anymore. Because I'm feeling better about my writing in general, I'm finding myself being more creative in other ways as well. The way Uenoyama connected with Mafuyu from the very beginning like this was a really big indicator that their relationship was going to help both of them. And help them it did. I love seeing these characters come to the realization that they love each other. Can we talk about the gay panic? With Uenoyama and Mafuyu, it happens, but when it comes to Akihiko and Haruki, oh my god, it's hilariously relatable. This show just genuinely encapsulates the gay experience and all of the hilariousness that can come with it. This is really helped by incredibly skilled writing and voice acting. If this show is lacking on any of these fronts, it wouldn't be nearly as good. It only works because each of the voice actors are able to portray a natural feeling character flawlessly. I don't know the first thing about music or instruments or how bands work. I wasn't sure if this show would be something I was going to be able to understand, but I gave it a chance and I wasn't disappointed. Because Mafuyu is really new to the music scene and he's learning everything as the anime progresses, you too can learn as well. And if you do know a lot about music, I'm sure you can connect to Uenoyama's side of it. Basically, no one is left out whether you know about music or not. The band stuff is just a backdrop for the characters to be involved in as they grow closer and explore their emotions together. Speaking of emotions, the visual imagery representing how characters are feeling is actually stunning. The scene where Mafuyu breaks his guitar strings before the concert is so intense. The characters all reacted the same way I did, pretty much just saying, "Oh fuck." That level of visual metaphor is something I strive to achieve in my own writing. The baggage that Mafuyu has touches on themes of depression, death, and loss. But this isn't the only thing about his character. There are mentions of suicide, and this is a really heavy topic that could end up either being really insensitive or triggering to people, but I personally feel like they handled these topics really well. I mean, they were really subtle about it, and it doesn't get too in your face. They handle these more serious topics in an extremely thoughtful way, and I'm happy to see that. Mafuyu has this trauma in his life that affected him in a lot of different ways. It's there to develop his character, and you see him evolve from where he was, and you watch him being able to cope, move on, and grow from the experience. It's basically showing that even after a really traumatic event, like the loss of someone you love, you'll be able to move on, and you just have to keep living to see what's going to happen. Even in the worst of times, you just have to keep going and you'll find that happiness. Given shows us that sometimes you have to look for the small things, and it will lead to more and more positivity until eventually there are more good moments than the bad ones. It's all about meeting new people and allowing yourself to find love again. At first, Mafuyu isn't sure that he wants to be in the band after Uenoyama offers him a spot. He feels like he doesn't deserve it. But after a while, he realizes that these people care about him and want to see him succeed. Think about your childhood for a second. Were there ever any places you would go that made you really happy or comfortable? Even if it was just being in your room or going over to a friend's house. Those emotions and memories are all still there. If you were to go back to those places now, how would it feel? It would feel really different and maybe even a little nostalgic, right? So now imagine you're Mafuyu, who needs to release his emotions after losing his boyfriend, and he's trying to feel again. He had to go around to all the places that meant something to him back when Yuki was still alive. As intense as going somewhere with positive associations can be, it would be even harder if those memories are now darkened. The feelings of comfort and happiness are gone, only to be left with an empty shell of the past. Mafuyu was trying so hard to find a way to come up with the words he needed to express himself. It's a really powerful way of showing us how he is trying to cope with everything. One of the biggest lessons I've learned since coming out and finding more queer folk is the importance of finding your family. This is basically saying to surround yourself with those who lift you up and support you. Your family can still be these people if you have a good relationship with them. But I frequently find that found family leans towards the friendships and relationships they've built outside of the place you lived in growing up. This lesson is really apparent in Given. These characters all have one another to rely on and help each other through things. You don't see their parents, and you don't have to. Obviously, this is a pretty standard thing in anime, but for this show it feels like it was actually intentional. I got this vibe from the beginning, but after you find out more about Mafuyu's childhood trauma, it becomes even clearer that this is what they are implying. When he tells Yuki that his father beat him when he spoke, it was so heartbreaking to hear and realize that this still affected him years later, even after his father was removed from the home. They have a reason for everything, even down to why Mafuyu is so quiet and reserved, and I love that they are so thoughtful with their characters. Kids are so malleable when they're young, and things that happen really stick with them forever, especially if they're traumatizing. Even though these are really heavy topics, they aren't showing any more than they need to. They're careful not to trigger anyone in their audience who may have had similar experiences. The level of care the writers put into the characters makes all the difference in this story, being an excellent example of good representation on so many different fronts. The writers aren't just pushing the stereotypes generally imposed upon LGBT people. The college-age kids are with the other college-age kids, and the high school kids are together. There are no situations of teachers and students being in any sort of relationship. Why is this a thing for gay relationship stories? Stop with this shit, okay? If you're gonna do this, can we at least have it be a college student with a young professor or something? I don't know, y'all. It just drives the image of LGBT people being pedophiles. This trope is so harmful, and we really don't need to be adding anything to it. Thankfully, the show doesn't do any of that, and it makes me appreciate it even more. Along the same lines as this, we don't see any of the seme-uke straight people bullshit of over-exaggerated physical forms, personalities, and sexual dynamics. The reason that trope is used so often is because this is making it easier for the straights to understand. A lot of that stuff is just porn for straight people rather than being made for the queer community. These dynamics literally don't exist in real relationships, y'all. If you want to hear more about this topic, check out the description for the link to Goat Jesus' video on this topic. I'm so glad that we see anime slowly moving away from these tropes. The first episode is an excellent example of show but don't tell. There's very little dialogue in this episode, yet you're able to find out so much about the characters. You see that despite having several rooms in the apartment, Mafuyu is alone with his dog, implying his mom must not be home a lot. He's very covered in shadows, symbolizing the depression and loneliness. The silence speaks louder than anything else would have been. His narration of inner thoughts suggests that he's not lonely in a way that sounds like he's trying to convince himself of that. As the show progresses, you get to watch as he becomes more confident in the words he is speaking, and it becomes the truth. It's not only Mafuyu, though. You see Uenoyama, and he doesn't want to hang out with his friends. He's tired, and he just wants a quiet place alone to himself. When he finds Mafuyu, it's like fate. They immediately realize that the other is like them, evidenced by the fact that Mafuyu moves over for Uenoyama to sit next to him. I watched the first few episodes of this show without reading the translation of the opening song lyrics. When I did, I was really surprised. It's genuinely really poetic. If I was paying more attention to it, it would have been really indicative of what was to come. I like that they don't spoil anything like some OPs tend to do, but instead opt to add small changes in later episodes. Episode 3 opens with Mafuyu thinking to himself as he's walking through the snow. I'm not lonely, even though I'll never see you again, even though I still don't have the words. Mafuyu has a lot of these really intense one-liners. If you've experienced the loss of someone close to you, they hit really hard. Natsuki Kazu, the writer and illustrator of the manga, has clearly had an experience like this or knows someone who has. The way she's able to write these characters and have them feel so real is incredible. When I say I've never connected to an anime on so many different levels, I mean it. There wasn't a better way to put that, but okay, seriously, these two characters really pissed me off. Hear me out, okay? Can we talk about this bitch real quick? She had no right to be telling Uenoyama about Mafuyu's past. Everyone can tell that he cares about Mafuyu, so why would she be telling him that he might be dangerous? Literally, that's so stupid and it makes no sense. Also, it's implying that she thinks being a gay is a bad thing, and this is also incredibly bullshit. I know she apologizes later, but it still makes me so mad. I'm glad she admitted she was wrong and that she shouldn't have been thinking that way. Most of the time they don't apologize, so to see that, it made it feel better at least. Another character I get mad at is Mafuyu's old friend. Again, he does get better, but man does he piss me off when you first see him. Mafuyu is clearly distressed about seeing you. You shouldn't bring up Yuki at all in that situation. He's a horrible person when you first meet him, and he really thought he could just be a dick and expect things to be fine. I'm glad Mafuyu ended up being able to talk to him later and things do work out. You see them eventually become friends again. Mostly I just want to say, don't be like those two, because it's not all about you and how you feel. Think about the people around you, how they feel, and take that into consideration before saying anything. A lot of the characters are gay. I hate when I hear people say, "But why are there so many? What's the point in the story? It's so unrealistic." To that I ask, why are there so many straight people in your shows? Just admit you're homophobic and move on. Like, have you ever met someone who identifies as LGBTQ+? I think about 95% of my friend group is on the all-encompassing gay spectrum, and I have maybe one or two who aren't. This is so common because you naturally drift toward people who have had a similar experience as you and can understand it. So in reality, having one gay person in a show or movie is actually way less accurate and super weird. The one thing that this show does better than most LGBT anime is that it clearly states that being gay is okay. A lot of LGBT anime dance around showing characters being sexual with each other or actually talking about their feelings about being gay. The fact that this anime is so out there and the characters do talk about sex matters a lot. Obviously not every romantic relationship is sexual in nature, so this isn't true for everyone. But in BL style anime, sex is a topic seldomly brought up, at least in the ones that are good representations of actual relationships. I'm not talking about doujinshis or yaoi mangas because those are exceptions definitely. In this show, not only are they very open with the fact that sex can happen in loving relationships, they also are just very obvious with their choice of wording about gayness. Like I mentioned earlier, they explicitly mention gayness, liking boys, wondering if it's weird, and saying that it's not. Some anime takes the approach of, "Oh, I'm not gay because I only like you." I've always hated that trope, and thankfully this show is absolutely not having any of that. I seriously think this is becoming one of my all-time favorite anime. This show is incredibly relatable for something that seems so specific. The amount of times I said mood while watching would shock you. The relatability for me really comes from realizing your identity and facing your past. I mentioned that I never connected with another anime in the same way I did for this one. It felt like someone was looking at me and how I feel about certain aspects of my life. It was like I was being personally attacked, but I didn't even mind it. In my 10 LGBT anime you should watch video, I go over some other sides of the spectrum with lesbian, asexual, trans, and non-binary representation. I apologize to all y'all bisexual folks out there suffering with me. Canonically bisexual anime characters are hard to come by, and I couldn't think of any personally when I sat down to make that video. I'll probably make a part 2 at some point, so if anybody knows of any, let me know down in the comments. I know this show is just one small section of the vast LGBTQ+ spectrum that is being covered, but it still feels like a really major step forward for the community. I hope to see a continuation of this trend and get more queer anime. Feel free to let me know what you thought, and as always, like this video and consider subscribing if you enjoyed. See y'all next week. Happy Halloween.